Hey guys, this is Vitaly with the Touch Live Studio, and today I want to talk to you about a perfect camera. Many of us spend a lot of time thinking about, complaining about different camera brands and what camera has, what camera doesn't have. And after listening for quite a while, I thought to myself, let me think about it. If I wanted to have a perfect camera, what would that be? Now, by nature, I am a designer. I love to build. I love to create things indoors, outdoors. So I thought, well, what if I put my ideas, my skills to the test? Not necessarily from building perspective, but if I were to come up with a concept camera, what would that be? So these are some of my ideas. So if I were to plan for a perfect camera, there will be some of my ideas, demands, desires. Number one, very first one, and it's given, it's in most of the cameras already, it's a perfect IAF. And like I said, it's given, right? Canon, Nikon, Sony, all these cameras have already an excellent IAF. You know, speaking of this one, Z9, I mean, it's just, it has some magic inside of this camera that I don't understand how it works, but it tracks a person's eye basically nearly in a pitch black conditions, right? So I know it's the same thing with Sony, the same thing with Canon as well, but IAF will be one of them. The second part of the perfect camera will be a 4K, 24, 30, 60 and 120 frames per second, no crop. Now I know most cameras have this already, including this camera, but these are just some of the things that I feel like a camera needs to have in order to be called a perfect camera. Now this is where it starts a little bit wild with some interesting ideas. One thing that I think the perfect camera could have is an internal storage, such as 512 gigabyte internal storage, to take full advantage of the processor and just have one single CFEXPRESS card just for redundancy in case if you need to have a copy of a footage. Because the chip sizes of, let's say, an 8 gigabyte card versus 1 terabyte card is virtually similar. Now if you take, for example, this Z9, it has a 64 gigabyte card, 128 is the same size, 256, 512, 1 terabyte is exactly the same size. So it's not like you need extra space in the camera to be able to accomplish that. So I think having an internal storage, such as some of the drones have today, I believe Mavic 2 got that, and Mavic 3 has internal storage. They'll be an excellent addition to a perfect camera. Now the next one is something that we already have in many devices already, is the Bluetooth for audio. Okay, so for audio monitoring, where you don't need to have those cables constantly connected to the camera in order to get the perfect audio. We have this in cell phones, we have this in AirPods, we have this in speakers. It's such a tiny device that gives you an ability to have it connected wirelessly rather than being tethered to a camera. So having a Bluetooth audio that's perfectly synced with your, whatever AirPods that you might be using, that'll be an excellent idea for a perfect camera. Now the next idea actually comes from another technology that many of us use today, is our drones. Have a similar live feed connection between the camera and the phone, just like we have for drones and the phones that we attach to the drones as our monitors. Now DJI seems like perfected that technology with their drones, so why not have the same technology in cameras today? There will be no lag. This way we can use a phone without need for external monitor. That would be a great improvement, simply be able to use our phones as an external monitor and for just a perfect connection. I know that there are cameras today that do have some sort of connection, and I have an app and I've been able to use it with the Z9 and Z6 II. but it's not there yet. So, but be able to have a perfect connection, be able to use a monitor for that purpose, I'm sorry, to use your phone for that purpose in place of the external monitor, that will be another addition to a perfect camera. Okay, now let's talk about one of the biggest debates in the camera industry. It is the biggest debate in the camera industry. And it's not a frame rates, and it's not lenses. It's literally simple things. Is the articulating screen. Some people like it to have a fully articulating screen where it flips to the front and to the back. That people who do a lot of videography, they love that. Now there's another segment of people who don't want to deal with a fully articulated screen, and all they want is just want to simply flips in the back like this, and then you're perfectly fine with that. Now I have an absolutely perfect solution for that, because most people who want to have a fully articulated screen, let's say when it flips all the way to the front or to the back, you can rotate it and then you can finally close it. Most people use that function to be able to frame themselves when they're vlogging like this. And I totally understand. It's very helpful to see, are you in the frame? Are you partially cut off, or what's happening? So I got a perfect idea, and this idea comes from GoPro Hero 9 or 10, where they have a little tiny, I want to say it's a 1-inch LCD screen in the front of their little tiny cameras that simply helps you to frame yourself. And if you have that option, then you don't need to be dealing with situations where you have a screen and then you have a cable connected to it. Maybe it's a headphone, maybe it is your microphone. Oh, wait a minute. If you have a foolproof Bluetooth option, then you actually don't need to deal with that. Anyway, so where would you place it? Well, I think on a camera such as this, I would get rid of the logo Nikon and I put it somewhere off to the side so you can still see that this is a Nikon camera or Canon camera or Sony camera, and simply put a 10-inch LCD screen in the front here. How awesome would that be to be able to simply monitor yourself? Most people are not looking to use this for, you know, make sure that you are in focus, because if you have a perfect IAF like Sony, Nikon, and Canon, you really don't need to be able to monitor yourself to make sure that you're in focus. As long as you can monitor that you are in the frame, that's not a problem. That solves the issue for probably 99% of people who actually use fully articulated screen. Now, another option is to be able to add to a perfect camera is to have a tally light in the front of the camera. Now, I know some cameras already have that. I believe some Sony cameras have that, Fuji cameras have that. Nikon does not have that, and it would have been nice if they could use this little light up here, and maybe that could be simply a firmware update option of, I don't know, 2.1 perhaps, suggesting. Now, something else that I would like to add to a perfect camera, and that would be to add an external recording option to an SSD solid state drive, just like Blackmagic 4, Blackmagic 6 has in their cameras. Now, this camera records in 8K, and the cost of CFEXPRESS is pretty high these days. So to be able to have an option where you can record externally to 1 terabyte to, let's say, something like this, that actually would solve a lot of problems. Be able to have this connect to a camera somehow, and I think it's probably a firmware update option that maybe some manufacturers could give us. So having this option, be able to connect externally, again would solve a lot of problems. And if you only have an external storage, and then you have your single CFEXPRESS card slot, and then an option of the external SSD recording for, let's say, 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte when you need to offload or record 8K material. If this is what your camera provides, like this one, that would solve the problem again for most people, and that will be part of a perfect camera. My next thing for perfect camera would be dedicated buttons to all kinds of functions that photographers and videographers usually use, and those are white balance, modes for photo and video recordings, maybe 4 to 5 to 6 custom buttons that you can set your camera to your liking based on the case uses that you have. If you're primarily a photographer and you do a little bit of video here and there, well, you can set your camera for that purpose. If you're a videographer primarily and you need all kinds of functions, maybe false colors or zebras or something else, that you can have enough custom buttons. Let's say like this Nikon Z9 has fairly good number of function buttons to be able to use for that purpose. I know that Sony cameras, more like a cinema cameras, but it would be nice to have this in a perfect camera. So having a custom buttons to do everything you need to, that will be my suggestion. Now let's talk about the price. So how much will this camera cost? I think in order to be reasonable, in order to be able to reach a large segment of population, people who could technically afford this camera. Now I know that even lower grade DSLRs or mirrorless cameras are probably pricey for a lot of people because most people opt to use their cell phones. But if you have all these awesome features and you price the camera at about $3,000, maybe $3,500 range, I think there's a lot more potential that people can actually reach that price bracket and purchase a camera that will be a perfect camera, and you would not need to change your camera for quite a while. You can only start building your kit of lenses. Now guys, tell me, am I too off base with these future specs, my wild ideas? Let me know what you think needs to be in the perfect camera. What are your ideas? Please share with the community below in a comment section, and we can have a little debate, a little discussion, a little ideas, and maybe some of the camera manufacturers will capture those ideas and will be able to implement in the future cameras. If you guys are interested in more content like this, please consider subscribing, hitting that like button if you have some likable ideas for the future, and I will see you in the next video.